Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Today, hopefully a fun video to try and just show how you can explore international movies that are in the Criterion Collection. Now the reason I'm doing this video is that the other day I was watching a video from Movies and Sue that she had put up on her channel, and it was about sort of Criterion snobbery and a bit of a defensive video about some reactions that she had had. Now Sue, who has a very large channel, lots of followers, and is into talking about new releases and box office and Blu-rays, things like that. She had been to the Barnes & Noble store because there's this Criterion 50% off sale going on throughout the month of July. And she bought a few titles and was showing a whole range of movies that were in the store, and it seems that she got some criticism or some comments on her videos about her kind of seemingly ignoring international movies and only buying American movies. And so yeah, quite naturally she was upset and did a video just to sort of try and address that and stop people sort of criticizing her for what she was buying, and quite rightly so. Now, I don't want to make this video about Sue at all. It's nothing to do with that, because certainly I see this a lot. There's a lot of people who, particularly in America, they take advantage of the Barnes & Noble sale and they buy lots of titles, and many people kind of set aside the international movies and go for the American movies, and that's fair enough. But let's just explore that a little bit. For people who are looking to get into international movies possibly, but just don't know where to start with that, then what can you do? And actually, going back to Sue's video, it's really interesting because when she went to the Barnes & Noble sale, I looked at that and she actually picked up a movie, and that movie was Wings of Desire, although obviously she got the nice Criterion edition, not this Laserdisc. So Wings of Desire is a German movie from the director Wim Wenders, and it was interesting because Sue mentioned in her video that while she didn't, it seemed, really know too much about this film, she knew that it had some kind of connection with this film, City of Angels, with Meg Ryan and Nicolas Cage, and City of Angels was one of her favourite movies, I think. So I think knowing that kind of connection, she thought, yeah, I will buy Wings of Desire. So there you go. Sue has now a starting point in international movies with Wings of Desire. So I just thought it'd be fun now just to talk about how you can now branch off into so many different directions from there. Firstly, just the notion of buying a movie in the Criterion Collection because you're aware that it's the original to an American movie remake. That's a good starting point, and there's lots of other films in the Criterion Collection that you can do with that kind of thought process. So for instance, George Sluzier did an American remake of his own film, The Vanishing, and this is a fantastic film to look out for. Paul Schrader did a 1982 version of Jacques Tourneur's Cat People. Star Wars, with its references to C-3PO and R2-D2. So George Lucas is on record for having been inspired by The Hidden Fortress from Akira Kurosawa. A Fistful of Dollars, which is the great Clint Eastwood spaghetti western, Man with No Name. That was actually a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo. And then also on the western side of things we have The Magnificent Seven, which famously is also a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. That's a few examples. Down and Out in Beverly Hills as well, which stars Nick Nolte and Bette Midler. That was a remake of Voodoo Saved from Drowning. So there you go. So going down that route, that's one way of looking at things. Now, the film Wings of Desire, this film actually has a follow-up movie to it. So sticking with the international side of things, you could then go on to Far Away So Close, which is the follow-up movie directed by Wim Wenders, and it reunites the same cast of Bruno Ganz and Otto Sander, but it also has in it Willem Dafoe here, but Nastasia Kinski. And wait a minute, Nastasia Kinski, does she come to mind at all? Well, yes, because Nastasia Kinski was also in the Wim Wenders film Paris, Texas. So that's another direction you can go into. So this is a great movie from Wim Wenders, and this is acknowledged as a classic. And this one has an American script, an American cast, and so you can easily get into Wim Wenders this way. And then sticking with Wim Wenders, well, in the Criterion Collection he also has this movie, Until the End of the World, and that links also with Wings of Desire because the actress Solveig Domartin, she also appears in this, as does Nick Cave, the musician. Nick Cave has a very significant moment in Wings of Desire, and he also contributes music for Until the End of the World. Or on the music theme, Wim Wenders did the film Buena Vista Social Club, so maybe you just like music documentaries and that would be your way in. Now for me, I actually love photography and I love the work of this photographer Sebastião Salgado. And I mentioned that because Wim Wenders also did a documentary, not in a Criterion Collection, but it came out in 2014 called The Salt of the Earth, and I love that movie. So Wim Wenders, he does fictional movies, but he also does documentaries. Now back to Wings of Desire and looking at the cinematography of that film. Well, it's a beautiful looking film, mostly shot in black and white with some colour scenes, and the cinematographer on that film is the great Henri Alacan, and he's actually paid tribute to in the movie because the circus that appears in Wings of Desire is actually called Circus Alacan, which is quite amusing. But Henri Alacan, maybe you're not quite sure who he is, but if you look him up and go back through his filmography, you'll find that he was involved in the great American classic, which is Roman Holiday, which starred Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn. And then if you go back further in his filmography, you'll find another movie that he did, which is in the Criterion Collection, and that is La Belle et la Bête, Beauty and the Beast, which is directed by Jean Cocteau. And then if you like Jean Cocteau, then you might get into the film Orpheus, which is about a poet who's obsessed with death and following his wife into the underworld. Or, sticking with the film's themes of the afterlife and mortality and death, then maybe that might lead you to discover other films in the Criterion Collection, such as Powell and Pressburger's A Matter of Life and Death, Ernst Lubitsch's Heaven Can Wait, or more recently Hirokazu Korida's Afterlife, which involves the thought of, if you were dying, what one memory could you hold on to? That sounds a really interesting film. I haven't seen that film yet. I want to check it out. Okay, and back to Wings of Desire, and now we've got the actor Bruno Ganz. Now he's a really calm presence in the movie and just a wonderful performance. But surprisingly, Bruno Ganz has played other much varied roles. So for instance, he was in Downfall playing Adolf Hitler, completely different role, absolutely unrecognizable in that. So maybe you'll want to check out more films that star Bruno Ganz. And now back to Sue. Actually, this is where it gets interesting because Sue was mentioning in one of her videos that a friend of hers had sent her a film which was The American Friend. So this film also stars Bruno Ganz, and it is also directed by Wim Wenders. So there you go, Sue. You now have 2 films from Wim Wenders in your collection. Now, the interesting thing about this, if you want to keep following different channels, is that An American Friend is a film about the character Tom Ripley. Now, Tom Ripley has featured in the American movie The Talented Mr. Ripley, but he was also in another film that's in the Criterion Collection, and that's Purple Noon, directed by René Clément, and which stars Alain Delon. So maybe you'll watch Purple Noon, and then you'll get into the whole area of watching films by Alain Delon, which could include La Piscine, The Swimming Pool, or this great classic Le Samurai, in which he did with Jean-Pierre Melville. And then if you're into Jean-Pierre Melville, then you're into a whole other region of films such as Le Cercle Rouge and The Army of Shadows. But then also back to Ripley for a moment. Another movie in the whole Ripley arena, if you like, is Ripley's Game, and that was directed by the Italian director Liliana Cavani. Now that Ripley's Game is not in the Criterion Collection, but Liliana Cavani's The Night Porter is, and that's a film about sadomasochism involving a concentration camp survivor, starring Charlotte Rampling. So maybe that might be a film of interest. Who knows? Now again, going back to Wings of Desire, when the film ends, there's a closing credit, and it says on the screen for Yasujiro, Francois and Andre. So what Wim Wenders means by that is that he's giving a dedication to Yasujiro Ozu, the great Japanese director, and his most famous film is Tokyo Story, which is a really beautiful film. I absolutely love this, and definitely for me, Yasujiro Ozu is now a favorite of mine, and the names Chishu Ryu and Setsuko Hara are now names that I know and love. But Francois is Francois Truffaut, and he famously directed The 400 Blows, as well as other films that feature in the Criterion Collection. And Andrei is Andrei Tarkovsky, director of such heavyweight films as Andrei Rublev and Solaris. Now, Andrei Tarkovsky is a director that I find quite challenging and hard work, so definitely I need a lot of patience watching his films. Yasujiro Ozu I just find delightful. Francois Truffaut I love, but I need to explore more of his filmography. And then finally, again, looking at Wings of Desire. So Wings of Desire is a German film, so maybe that might make you more interested in looking at films by other German directors. So for instance, in the Criterion Collection, there's the director Christian Petzold, and he did a film called Phoenix. And then also there's the work of Rainer Werner Fassbinder, who is known as a rebel of German cinema, and he has films in the Criterion Collection such as Ali, Fear Eats the Soul, The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant, and works such as The Marriage of Maria Braun and Lola and Veronica Voss. So very quickly, we've just gone in a whole load of different directions there, but really the point I'm just trying to make here is just be interested, just be curious, and make your own film journey. I think making film journeys is really, really important in terms of your own development and finding your own interests. Fair enough, you could just randomly buy a movie, or you could just take a recommendation for a friend. No problem with that, but it's just so much more fun to make your own choices and to make your own directions in exploring your film journey. So that's really just all I wanted to say. I certainly wish Sue luck in terms of watching Wings of Desire and The American Friend, and I hope that she will enjoy more foreign movies, international movies, and the same with anybody. Like I say, I regularly see lots of people showing their pickups from Barnes and Noble, and yeah, a lot of the time it is American movies, and I'm not here to criticize anybody for that, but I'm just here as someone who enjoys all kinds of cinema, and I really want to share that and try and make people enthusiastic about that if I possibly can in some small way. So if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. All the best to you. If you do make your own exploration in international cinema, let me know where you started from and where you've gone to next. I think that's really fun. Okay, all the best to you. Bye-bye.